People who do something with their lives, and it doesn't have to be something big. Somebody who works in a supermarket and who is friendly and smiley inspires me, or somebody who's gone through a hard time and is still happy and inspired. Basically, people who don't give up inspire me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Most Memorable Journeys. And it's a special one for a few reasons. The main one being that we're celebrating an incredible milestone, our 200th episode. Now, you're probably slightly confused at this point and wondering who I am and what I've done with Elisabeth. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Emilia Papadopoulos, and I've actually been a guest on this wonderful podcast before. I'm also a former BBC News correspondent, and I adore long-form interviews. So it was only natural that on such a momentous occasion, I jumped at the chance to guest host this episode. Now, I'm very excited for all of you to hear from today's guest, but first I just wanted to take a moment to really reflect on what an incredible achievement it is to get to 200 episodes. According to my research, less than 3% of podcasts come this far. So that really is quite something. And in the same breath, I'm reminded that it's not just the number of episodes that matter. It's the passion, the dedication, and the connection that Elisabeth pours into each and every one. With her passion for storytelling, deep curiosity for the world around her, and a commitment to bringing powerful voices and meaningful conversations to life, Elisabeth has created something truly exceptional. Over the course of 200 episodes, she's brought us on a journey that's not just about the topics explored, but also created a community of loyal listeners like you along the way. And that's thanks to her ability to make every conversation feel personal, impactful, and full of heart. So here's to 200 episodes and to many more to come. And now I'm honored to introduce my guest today on this episode of Most Memorable Journeys. She's the heart and soul of the podcast. And today we get to hear about her remarkable journey. So thank you, Elisabeth, for sharing your voice with us and creating a space where we can all learn, grow, and be inspired. So Elisabeth, very, very huge welcome to your own podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for doing this, Emilia. I am really excited. I think at this moment, I'm more nervous than I ever am when I am the host.
Rubbish. I don't believe it.
It's true.
We are going to have a great time. And I'm so honored that you have allowed me to come on board and take your seat, because I remember when you interviewed me and I sort of wished I was on the other end. And today I get to be, but also because I feel that your story is a remarkable one. And you put so much time and love and effort into bringing other people's stories to life and bringing them to the forefront. And, I know you're an open book. I know you never hold anything back if people ask you or you're having a discussion. But I do think that we need an episode dedicated to you and everything you've achieved. And I cannot wait to get stuck in. So are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. Are you sure you're going to let me take this over?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I am. Yes, I'm all yours.
Okay, great. So Elisabeth, I'm going to just get straight to the point, and I want to go right back to the beginning, because you are many, many things. You are an author. You are a podcast host. You're a wife. You're a mother. You are a life coach. You are a mentor. You travel. You hike. Every time I speak to you, you seem to be hiking up some mountain somewhere. You do so many things. So I want to go back to the very, very beginning. Do you remember the first time that you had an inkling that you wanted to achieve many things or go to many places? Do you have a core memory of when that happened?
Yes, I do. Because I had a difficult childhood and I was bullied at school, but I was clever. I was a very, very clever girl, and I was always second best in class, because the best one in the class was the one of the teacher's daughter. And somehow they never gave me number one, but I always came second. And I knew then that I was made for more than what was happening in that village where I was born. I sort of realized very early that there is a lot more to life than what I got at this point.
So, well, for us, you were always number one then in that case. But that's quite a cool memory to have. And you talk about the village that you're from. I know you've written this in your book. I wanted to go back to the very, very beginning of your story, which was the day you were born.
The day I was born it's actually the worst day of the year, but that has nothing to do with me.
I was gonna say that in your book you described the day you were born. You said, and I quote this: "No one celebrated, and my family could have done without me." And that really broke my heart reading that. And I think a lot of people that maybe don't know that much about you or haven't read your book might not know that. I say that because when anybody meets Elisabeth, you are the bubbliest, happiest, loveliest person. And to read about the start that you had in life and that being your feeling, I think you called it changing your own destiny. So tell me how you went from being somebody born that nobody celebrated to changing your destiny. How do you sit with that?
Well, that's a long story, but starting, first of all, I had to find out that this was not my fault, because for a very, very long time, I lived with a lot of shame. My mother was 16 when I was born, and she wanted to give me up for adoption. And then my grandfather took me home, and I grew up with my grandparents, but they were old. And when I was 10, my grandfather died. So I had no guidance. And that's why I was a feisty little girl. I became very industrious. I started working when I was 13 because I knew that I wanted to learn languages and I knew that I wanted to go abroad. And I didn't really have this desire to travel. I was interested in the world, but basically what I wanted was to get away. I planned my escape from a very early age. And I went to work to finance my language lessons because I knew that because at that time, there weren't so many options to go and work abroad. You could either become a tour guide or a flight attendant or work for the diplomatic corps. But I couldn't do that because we didn't have any money to send me to school any longer. That was another thing that really bothered me and that I learned from a very early age. Financial freedom is a thing. People talk about money doesn't make you happy, but when you don't have any money, you're very unhappy. And money gives you a lot of freedom. There's a certain amount you need. You don't need millions or billions, but you do need money to study, to achieve your dreams. So this is it in a nutshell. I knew that I needed to go to work to learn languages because I wanted to go abroad. And I studied for 3 years and then I got my first job in Greece.
Because you make it sound very, very easy, and we're going to get to your first job in Greece. I wanted to ask you, how does somebody, though, so young, especially you're in a Swiss village, how does somebody so young have that foresight to understand the way the world works in that way, that you need money for financial freedom, that you want to learn languages because that will get you far? That's a lot of foresight for a very young girl.
I'm not sure if it was foresight at the time. Looking back now, it looks like foresight, but I think it was mainly determination. It was just, and I still am. I'm a Capricorn. I'm not really much into astrology, but I do get what I want most of the time. And even if it takes me a very long time, and I think that has something to do with it. I knew what I wanted, and it took me a long time to get it, but I managed to get there at some, and of course, the way I am explaining it now is not as straight as it happened. There were a lot of detours and a lot of fallbacks and many tears and many heartaches. But yeah, I just did it. I don't remember exactly how I felt, to be honest. But the only thing that I do remember is being bullied hurts. Being bullied at school and not being included. And I had this feeling, and even now there are moments after all the work I've done and after all the things I have achieved, when somebody leaves me out, it stings a bit. I don't know, maybe that happens. Maybe that happens to everyone, probably does. But in my case, it sort of brings back a memory.
It's very, I think for many of us, it's very deep rooted. Those feelings that we feel in childhood that perhaps we can't process at the time, sometimes they happen later on in our life when we think we have everything together and we know how to handle every situation. And something will happen and it will take you right back to that time. I think many people have been there, but perhaps not having, been in a circumstance like yours. So how do you feel about your childhood now, looking back as Elisabeth now, the successful, happy, wonderful, you know, family lady who's done it all? Looking back on your childhood now, have you processed everything that happened?
Yeah, I am eternally grateful to every single person who bullied me because they gave me the fuel to do what I did. And I remember when I left, when I was 19 and a half, and I went to this to work in Greece. And I thought, I was looking at this situation and I thought, I'm going to show you, I thought, and I did. Because I didn't like the way I was treated, because it's, how people can be. People can be judgmental and very mean. And
Mm,
it wasn't my fault what had happened.
yeah. Have you ever encountered any of them later on in life?
No. Actually, yes, one of the teachers who made me feel really, really bad once came to book a trip when I was helping out in a travel agency. And he was telling me, we didn't talk about any of these things, but he was telling me that he was working in a terrible school and that his students were really awful and some of them carry knives or something. And I thought, well, karma is a thing.
What is that? What is your famous phrase? Karma never forgets an address.
That's right.
Yeah, that's an
Yes.
Elizabeth original.
Mm-hmm.
We touched very briefly on it, but you mentioned there that you said it wasn't your fault. What are you alluding to? Because you also wrote in the book, you talked also about feeling some form of shame when you were younger and knowing not knowing at the time that it wasn't your fault. So I think it's just so incredibly impressive how you have come through all of this and not just come through it, you have really risen above it and you've soared above it. How do you do that? Because many people listening to this and many people in life have been through similar situations and perhaps haven't processed that shame, that fear of bullying, that feeling of unwantedness. What would your advice be to them? How do you process those feelings? Because they're big
Well,
ones.
in my case, it was, and I think I write about that. You see, when I went abroad and when I started living in places where nobody knew anything about me, and I was young and I was pretty and blonde and long-legged and in my 20s, everybody is pretty in their 20s. But I still had this feeling of unwantedness and this very, very low self-esteem. And you can sort of, when I tell that to my friends who met me here when I was in my 20s, you would have never thought that.
Mm,
I used to know how to cover it well. But what happened was when I was working in Florida in 1989, when I was 29, I used to take my clients to the Edison Mall and then they had lunch and I used to walk around. And I walked into this bookshop and I picked up a book. And we're going back to 1989. There weren't so many self-help books at that time. Personal development wasn't a thing. And I
mm,
picked up this book called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. And I bought it. And I went to the hotel. We stayed in Marco Island. Gave the keys to my guests, and I went to my room and I started reading, and I couldn't stop. I think that was really a tipping point, understanding that your subconscious mind has a lot of power, and 95% of everything we do is driven by the subconscious mind. And all my shame, all my habits, all my values that had been instilled in me were in there. And I started learning how to change them. I started learning how to set goals, and also came across a couple of months later. This is the weirdest story that people probably don't believe, but it's true. I was in Los Angeles waiting for a new group. I had 2 days off and I was in one of those crappy Holiday Inns or one of those hotels near the airport. And I was bored. I didn't know what to do on that day. And I walked around the hotel and I saw an announcement for a public speaking seminar. And I thought, yeah, okay, that's what I do. I'll join that. And I spent the day doing this public speaking seminar, and I bought the book of the guy who gave it. It was this freaky guy with a yellow T-shirt and shorts, and it was Tony Robbins. Because it was his beginning. We are the same age. And that book, Unlimited Power, I still have, and I still look at sometimes, because, it's not always going as well as it looks in my life either. We have moments, we all have our ups and downs. And when I need a little uplift, I go back into my books that I bought then. But I did a lot of work on myself.
I was just about to say, you've put in the work.
And I believe that the mind is a muscle. You see, I exercise. I like exercising. I like hiking. I like all this. But the mind is a muscle, and it needs the same amount of exercise as your body muscles. I sometimes tell people when they come to see me for a life coaching session or a hypnotherapy session, I ask them, do you meditate, or do you go into yourself? Sit still and listen to yourself. Yeah. And they say, yeah, I tried that once or twice, but it didn't work. You have to do it all the time. Once or twice is not enough.
I think it's also with, generations coming up now, and maybe also my generation as well. There tends to be this very much victim mentality, right? We are all victims. And I think my generation, the millennials, and maybe more so the sort of the Gen X's, we've almost been allowed to become victims, right? We've been enabled, I might say. And I feel that your story and what you're describing is a situation of basically creating your goals, creating all your opportunities, and not letting the past define you. What advice would you give young people now? Because I think it's really difficult. We live in a society where people very much thrive on being victims. We see it all the time. What would your advice be to not just young people, but basically to anybody who doesn't know how to get out of that rut?
Well, it's kind of self-explanatory when you look at it, because if you are, I explain it with a metaphor. When you are in the passenger seat, you have no control over the destination. Somebody else does. But when you change to the driver's seat, you're in charge, and you may have to do a detour, or you may crash, or you may, I don't know, get lost, but you are in charge. And then you have to take responsibility for the detour, for getting lost, for crashing. And I think this is what people don't understand. And I actually posted today, because I make these posts every day. Your life is the result of all your decisions. And if you don't like your life, you have to take different decisions. And then people tell me, but this happened to me, and it's not my fault. And I said that at the beginning to you, it wasn't my fault that I had no parents, but it's what you make of it. It's not, you can never, ever choose what happens to you, but you can always choose how you want to react, how you want to respond, what you want to do with it. You can either sit there and feel sorry for yourself, and then does that make you happy? No. Or you can say, hey, this, I guess I needed this. This is this is my lesson. What can I get out of this? Or how can I fix it? And sometimes you can't fix it right away, but, how can I live with it for a while?
Yeah, I think that's the mentality that we need more of, definitely, because I think a lot of people feel like they can't even take the first step towards doing that, because sometimes it is harder to sit with your feelings and sit with those thoughts, especially when they are difficult ones. And I guess it's part of the process, isn't it? Really processing things that have happened to the best of your ability, so that you can, my therapist always talks to me about something called walking through the fear, which is where we take the scariest situation that could happen, or something I'm really frightened of, and we walk through it, right? We face it head on. We don't go around, we don't go up, we don't go down. We walk straight through it. And at the time, it's the most frightening thought and the most frightening feeling. But actually, once you've walked through it, it's not so bad.
Yeah, there's actually a book which I read roundabout, because once I started this whole thing at the time, then when I was 29, 30, I started reading a lot. There's a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. And I read that in 1989. And it's that book is still gold, But look, I don't want people to get me wrong. I know how hard life can be. And sometimes it's just too much. One thing happens and the next thing happens, and you don't even have time to breathe. Or I know it's not always easy. I do not want to sort of, tell people get alive or get over it. Life can be really, really challenging, but we can always see the positive side. There is another book which I absolutely love. It's called Man's Search for Meaning by Dr. Viktor Frankl. He was in a concentration camp in the Second World War. He was a psychologist, and he didn't know if his family was alive. He didn't know, but he just believed that they are. He believed that it's going to be okay. And that famous phrase is in there, is between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is where the power is. And it's very beautiful, that, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's, that answer just there is very inspiring, will be very inspiring for many people, which brings me to my next question, Elisabeth. Who inspires you? Because I feel that you have this most incredible personality. You light up the room. You're a ray of sunshine everywhere you go. But I want to know, is there anybody that you look up to, maybe not even just work-wise, maybe it could be a family member or someone else, somebody that inspires you to shine every day?
Oh, there's many people who inspire me. My friends inspire me because they're real, because they go through shit. Sorry, it's my podcast. I can say the word. And, they come out on the other side. And I think it's normal humans who inspire me. Of course, there are people who, one of the people that I really like is Louise Hay. Louise Hay is, she's kind of the mother of personal development. And she did everything with love. And people may say, it's stupid. She tells you to look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that I love you. And people will say, oh, what the hell? Why would I do that? But, self-love is a very, very important factor. And if you don't love yourself, you can't love other people. But now coming back to your question, people who do something with their lives, and it doesn't have to be something big. Somebody who works in a supermarket and who is friendly and smiley inspires me, or somebody who's gone through a hard time and is still happy and inspired. Basically, people who don't give up inspire me.
That's amazing. And I think it's not, when you mentioned somebody that works in a supermarket, it's these little rays of sunshine that I think you see in our in daily life. And many of us are so busy when we go about our daily life that we might not stop and notice. And I think, it's, if you do practice a little bit of mindfulness and notice a nice ray of sunshine on a tree, or, I was having breakfast with my daughter at the weekend, she noticed a tiny bird in a tree. And we spent a long time looking at it and appreciating it and talking about it. But also, I feel the same way when I meet somebody that's very kind or helpful that I don't know, like you said, in a supermarket or something. And it does uplift your day. And I think it's really important that we take little bites of inspiration from all around us as well. And I'm sure on your journeys, and you've had many of them, is it 80 countries you've been to?
Oh, it's over 100.
Over 100 now?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to get to those, but we go from, we were in Switzerland, and then we take your trip to London. I think it was London first, wasn't it?
Yes.
And from London, we go to your first job in Greece.
That's right.
Tell me about how the transition from quiet Swiss village to Greece.
I went to Geneva for a year to work for an American company because I had the opportunity to work in English and speak French, so I could practice both my languages. And then London is a different story. I had enough money. I had made money working when I was 16 for a trip to London. It was the first time on a plane. And I flew to London. We went to London with my aunt for a week. And that opened up the world for me. The first time on a plane, and I would have sold my soul to get on a plane again. And, being in London and being out of the place where people judge you. There were all these people didn't know me. So I felt free. I could breathe and I could be me. But then I wanted to go to Greece. I had this desire. I had been on holidays in Rhodes and I wanted to go. I wanted to become a tour guide and I wanted to go to Greece. And I put an ad, listen to this. I put an ad in a Swiss woman's magazine called Annabelle. It had a section at the end. It had a few pages where you could, I don't know, sell something or look for somebody and I put an ad in there, like 3 lines saying, I'm looking for a job in Rhodes as a tour guide. Can anybody help me? And a woman called me. And she said to me that she goes there every year. She worked in a bank in the winter and she goes every summer and they're looking for people who speak many languages. And yeah. And I called this owner, Nikos Sevastakis, I remember. I called him once or twice and he said, yeah, come. So I flew to Rhodes when I was 19 and a half to work. I had no idea where I was going to stay. I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no idea how to be a tour guide.
Had you ever even eaten Greek food before? Did you know anything about, any of that?
I had been on holidays, so I knew, and I had learned. Of course, I always am well prepared. Once I knew that I was going, I took a crash course at the University of Geneva in Greek with Mrs. Balta. I have a very good memory when it comes to these things. So
that's another level of preparation, Elisabeth. You're putting us all to shame here.
So yeah, when I went to in I think it was March 1980. I flew to Rhodes and I started working, and I worked for peanuts. This guy took advantage of us. He gave us accommodation. We were sharing an apartment, the 4 of us, a girl from Belgium, an English girl, and this Katerina who had helped me get the job. And I worked really from 6 o'clock in the morning for the first Olympic Airways flight until, I don't know, a night excursion, Rhodes by night or something. I worked like 14 hours a day, every day.
But again, like going back to the way this came about, and this is what is amazing. It's just such a sliding doors moment. You having the thought of putting an advert in a magazine. Now, what are the chances? Because we've all read magazines. It's very rarely do you go to the back to the adverts and really look at them. The chance that somebody would see that advert, call you, and the whole thing would end up leading you to the moment we are now, where we're having this chat. It's pretty amazing.
It is. It is. I mean, I don't know. It's just, it was meant to be.
It's destiny. Do you believe in destiny?
Oh, I do. I very much do. Yes. And I also believe that somehow things work themselves out when they will have to.
They do. I agree with you. And I really feel like I'm living your life with you right now. We've gone back in time. So we're in Greece. You're in terrible accommodation. You're not being paid very much. You're doing tours and you're not really sure how to do that. Where do we go from here?
Well, then I went back because one of the reasons why I wanted to go to Greece and why I did this was because I was too young to work for a Swiss tour operator. I wanted to be employed by a Swiss tour operator, but you had to be 20 or 21, and I hadn't reached that yet. So once I had done that season, I had a lot of fun. I mean, it's like we never slept. It was that time. There was a disco on the hill, Aquarius Disco and Mike's Pub. That's where where I lived, more or less. I just went home to shower and back to work. But then I was old enough to apply for a job with a Swiss tour operator and to get normal pay, to get insurance, to get an accommodation. From then on, for 11 years, I worked for a Swiss tour operator and I was sent everywhere, all over the world.
And you've been to over 100 countries. So we don't have time to talk about all of them, but could you give me your top 3 in the world? And then we'll go to the one that you least enjoyed.
I really don't know. This is I ask this question. I ask my guests this question. I really don't know what my favorite place is in the world. I love New York. I have a special thing for New York, and I worked in New York for a winter, and I lived in a hotel on Broadway. So that was probably some of the best time of my life. Just being able to walk to the theater, being able to walk everywhere. Definitely that one.
New York is a good one.
Yeah, I love Thailand. I also worked in Thailand, out of Phuket and out of Bangkok. I love the Thai and I love the food. So that could be maybe number 2. But then there is so many others. I mean, I've spent quite a bit of time. I love Australia. I don't know. I really, really don't know.
Well, we're going to keep Australia as the 3rd one. I know that you enjoy traveling to all destinations, but we really want to know the countries that you just have no desire to go back to.
I don't know.
Give us the goss. Give us the goss.
Let me see. Where did I not have a good time? Maybe I once went to Cherba. I had to, for a year, I was doing just replacements when people got sick or when people wanted to go on holidays. And I went for 2 or 3 weeks and I had to go to Cherba. Cherba is a small island off the coast of Tunisia.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there for 3 weeks and I was so happy to leave. Maybe I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to come back here again.
You're working in Switzerland and in travel. You're going to all these amazing places. You're seeing the world and having lots of adventures. When does your husband come in?
So I was working in the first season was in Rhodes. Then I went to Skiathos in Greece. And at the end of the season, I had to go to Athens to my supervisor and, talk about my summer. And she was happy with me. She had, as she said, we want you to continue. And we have a new destination. We're opening a new destination next year. And that would be interesting for you because it's nice to go and create your own thing. And it's Cyprus. And I thought, Cyprus, where the hell is Cyprus? And I said, yes, I'll go. So I was sent to Limassol on the 27th of March, 1982. And I had no idea. I didn't know that Cyprus was a British colony. I didn't know that they were driving on the wrong side of the road. I didn't know how big it was. I was living in Limassol and I had to go to Protaras 3 times a week with my little Fiat Panda. And no highways at the time. You don't remember that because you weren't born. But I came here. I knew nothing, but I loved it because the Greeks, those 2 summers in Greece were very different. The Greeks are less organized than the Cypriots. When you come here from Greece, you notice the difference. And, this British influence and the organization and the honesty as well. And Cyprus in the 80s was a paradise. The hospitality in Cyprus was beautiful. I never went to a hotel without being asked if I wanted a coffee or stay for lunch or come and stay the night. It was amazing. So I liked it and I stayed. I came in 82, 83, 84, always in the summer. And in 85, I met my husband.
And you stayed?
No, I didn't. It's a very long story and I'm not going to go too much into this, but it took us 10 years. He married somebody else in those 10 years and then I left, I went and worked in other places. But as you say, destiny, we got back together. And
here you are. Still
I came back in 94. Since 94, I am here permanently.
Well, that's a very good run, and I think Cyprus is one of those places when you're coming from outside of Cyprus, and I imagine in 82 more so. And I know from my own mother who came from the UK here. I mean, I think for her experience was pretty. It was so different to anything she had been used to, and probably quite grim in some remarks. There were no, real supermarkets or roads, but Cyprus has always had that charm. And I think it definitely still has. It's one of those places that if you get it's very difficult to leave. You don't want to leave. It becomes home to so many people, whether they are Cypriot or part Cypriot or not Cypriot at all. Many, many people call Cyprus home. And I think it is a wonderful place. So we're very happy that you stayed here. But if we move on to we fast forward a little bit because you're in Cyprus and you're doing all these things. You have a family. I'm just a little bit conscious of time, but I want to talk about podcasting because what gave you the idea to start? And being in Cyprus, I guess you can do podcasting from anywhere, but did you ever feel at any point that it would be hard to do it from here because there isn't so much of that kind of tech know-how or that big community of podcast agencies and people that will help you with microphones and studios? You kind of started it grassroots at home, right?
Yeah, but I have to give you a little other explanation here before we go to podcasting, because before I traveled and worked for 17 years for the Cyprus Police Association as a translator.
Oh my goodness. Wait, it's 7 or 8 languages to speak.
Well, I speak 6.
And
I know a
seven,
little bit, but yeah, 6. I can work with 6.
only 6? Only,
Only
I'm
6.
pointed, only 6. That is an achievement. What do you not do, Elizabeth? Can you cook?
Yes, I love to cook.
Oh, stop it. We're going to find something that you can't do.
Oh, there's many things that I can't. Trust me.
So with the Cyprus Police Association, okay, we'll come back to podcasting. So
Yeah,
you're Cyprus Police Association, but what kind of places are you traveling to?
it was a funny story because I went to my friend Catherine, who you know, told a policeman somewhere that she speaks French. And he called her one day and asked her to go and translate. But she doesn't speak French. She was just boasting. And I thought she knows that I can say that here. And so
That's
she called.
everyone's worst. We have all been Catherine at one point in our lives.
So she called me and she said to me, "Can you help me? Can you come to the police station with me?" And I said, "What have you done?" And she said, "No, no, no. It's to go and do a translation." So I went. That was in 2003. And they liked me. So because I could do Greek to English, Greek to German, Greek to French, and vice versa. So they started calling me more often. And one day I was there, and one of those higher ranking officers asked me, he said to me, "I'm the president of the Cyprus Police Association, and I go on a trip once or twice a year. Would you go? Would you come?" And I thought, I heard the word travel. My kids were then 6.5 and 8. And I
And
said,
off she went.
"Sorry?"
And off you went.
Well, I know. I just said yes. I thought this guy is never going to call me. He's just talking here. And 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from his secretary if I could go to Poland. And I thought, oh my God, I don't speak Greek well enough to translate in a conference room at the police conference. And what am I going to do with the kids? Who's going to drive the kids to school and blah, blah. And I called my husband, and my husband said to me, "You have to go, otherwise they'll never call you again." And I went, and that was the beginning of 17 years. We went all over Europe because it was the European Police Association. I got to go. That added a lot of countries to to the ones that I was counting. All the ex-Yugoslavia countries. I went to Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, Albania, all these places because it was union work. And we used to go and visit ministers and all sorts of people.
Well, and I assume that when you're traveling in that capacity with that kind of organization, you're seeing countries in a different way to what you would be if you were, doing tours or going on holiday. You're seeing something a little bit perhaps more raw and real.
Oh, totally. You get into the Ministry of, depending on what they have, the Ministry of Interior or the Ministry of Security, and you meet all these people. Sometimes you get transported in a police car, or you get accompanied by. I've done a lot of stuff there. That was lots of fun. Great.
Are there any kind of memories from that time, like exciting memories or any funny stories of something strange that happened?
I think they're classified at the moment still.
Still classified. Well, we're going to come back to you in a couple of
Maybe
years.
we'll have to do another episode. But now coming to podcasting. Now, I was the director of the Global Woman Club at the time, and that was at the beginning of COVID. And all the meetings, everything was brought on Zoom. So we started having all the club meetings on Zoom, and we started having conferences on Zoom. And there was this guy, what's his name? I've forgotten his name, who gave us a lecture about podcasting, and he was selling a course. And I thought, because I was thinking of writing another book at the time, because during COVID, we had to do something. We couldn't travel. So I thought maybe I should write another book about my traveling life or this. And then I attended this course, and I thought, I like to talk. Why not a podcast?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, now that we can't travel, at least I can talk about it. And that's simply how it started. Very simple.
But how did you about getting, your first guest? Because I think so many people want to start a podcast, or they kind of do 1 or 2 or 3 episodes, and it's all a bit much. Take me back to that first episode. So how did you secure your first guest? And then how did you keep that momentum going?
I have a man in Barcelona, a German, Florian, who does my editing. Mm-hmm. And he coached me. He told me which microphone to buy. He told me that you need to have 7 episodes ready when you upload the first one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because on the first day when you upload, I think on the first day you post 2 and then another one the next day, because the thing is that when people like it, when people like you, they want more. So you have to give that to them. I don't remember exactly what the procedure is, but it's kind of like this. And then you have to go every week. And once you have, when you have 7 ready, you have time for the next one. At the beginning, I was talking about myself mostly. I was telling stories about my destinations where I had worked or about my round trips that I had done. And only, I don't know when, maybe episode 25 or something, I started having guests because I thought, this is fun, and I'm not the only one who has traveled, and other people want to talk about traveling. And everybody has a story. The phrase, your story could be somebody else's survival guide.
Yeah.
So we have to tell our stories. Even if people think, so I know that some people think that I'm, I may be seeking attention with my sob story, or maybe I don't know. I don't mind, because
let them.
Let them. Yeah, one person may hear this and it may help. And if it's just one person every time, I'm happy.
But I also think, Elisabeth, and I know we went over it a lot, and I was very conscious because I wanted this episode to be a real celebration of you and everything you've achieved. But so much of what you have achieved and so much of who you are, as somebody that doesn't know you, I feel that I do know you, but I don't know you intimately like your friends and your family. I feel that reading your story, so much of who you have become is because of your circumstances. Everything has played a role in making you who you are. And I would like to reframe. I will not allow you to call it a sob story. It is not a sob story. That is your truth and that's your reality. And I think so many people that have had similar situations feel shame. They cannot talk about it. And hearing somebody else talk about it can sometimes be the freedom that one is searching for. And you never know. I was always brought up with the ethos of, if you make a difference to just one person's life, then that is a life well lived. And so I think all of your experiences have made you who you are. And we are very, very thankful for that, because you're quite frankly fabulous and wonderful. I think I imagine that everyone that knows you is very proud, but I hope you're very proud of who you are too.
I am proud in a good way. I know what I've done. I know what I have achieved, but I also know that we must never take ourselves too seriously. I love my life. And I also know that I have come to a certain age where you don't know how much you have left. Maybe it's a lot, maybe it's not. We never, ever know that. And I think we must never be too arrogant to think that we are entitled to some kind of life, or that how much more life we are entitled to. I am hoping for more, and I'm actually calculating now. I'm turning 65 in December, so I'm sort of hoping for another 10 really good years where I can travel far.
You will.
And then maybe slow down a little bit and go to Switzerland and to Greece. But you don't know that. And that's one of my my advice. Don't postpone things. Don't say we're doing it. Just do it. Richard Branson says, fuck it, let's do it. Yeah.
I am of the same ethos. And so this is how the podcast essentially came about. You just dove in and said, you know what, we're doing it. Do you remember who your first guest was?
I wish I could remember his name now. It's very embarrassing. The man who sold me the course.
Oh, amazing!
That was his sort of his selling point was, if you buy my course, I will be your podcast guest.
Okay, and you've had many guests over the 200 episodes. Is there one episode that speaks to you in terms, maybe perhaps it was surprising in its content or what the guest revealed, or something that really maybe changed the way you approach something? Does one jump out? I know you love all your guests, but if there was one that really perhaps just sat very well with you.
There's a couple. I mean, the best one, of course, I ever did was with Emilia Papadopoulos.
Oh, she's wonderful.
But I think one of the really remarkable ones is Adamos Marneros, who was the last pilot who landed at Nicosia Airport.
I listened to that. That was
So that was very, I mean, that story that he didn't want to fly to Cyprus, and because he knew what was going to happen. And the moment he parked the plane and walked away, the bombs started falling. That's it. Surely that's one. The other one
that has to be up there.
The other one that I really like is Mohammed Hadid. I don't know if you know Gigi Hadid and Bella Hadid.
Of course, yeah.
He's their father. And he is Palestinian. And I was stalking him for a long time on Instagram. And I finally he said, okay, I'm going to do it. He said,
okay, so this is what, before we get to that, how did you get him on the podcast?
I kept sending him messages. I kept sending him messages, and I sent him messages when I was in Jordan at the time. And I said, this is for you. I've looked over at Palestine. And, he couldn't resist at some point. He had to reply. I said, let's do a podcast episode. I will send you a Zoom link. I sent him a Zoom link. I was waiting. I think it was on a Saturday evening. I was waiting here, and I thought, he's not going to come. He's not going to come. He's not going to come. And then my phone rang. And he called me and he said, I don't know how to use that Zoom link. I don't know how to open it because I don't have my laptop. And
my goodness.
I said, you know what? Because I wanted him. I thought if I don't grab him now, he's going to go.
That's it.
So I opened my Zoom and I spoke to him on the phone. And I recorded it on my Zoom.
And what was the sound quality like?
It's bad, but it's okay. It's not as good as it should be, but I just wanted to have him because he's a very remarkable man. And the funniest part of it all is that he opened the disco on the hill in Rhodes. Can you imagine that in Rhodos in Greece with some of his friends?
Amazing. Destiny again. That is a full circle moment.
Yeah. So of course, there's many. I mean, Les Brown is one of the most famous public speakers in the world. There's many people, but these kind of stick out.
Well, 200 episodes. I'm sure you have so many amazing memories of it, and it's always good to hear about the ones that just kind of stuck out because they had their special elements. Whether it was Mohammed Hadid on a speaker through the Zoom link. So many. Now, at what point did you say, okay, this is not only am I enjoying it, but I'm getting engagement. People are appreciating or understanding or liking this thing that I'm putting out here in the world. At what point did you say, I'm going to just keep this going? Was it a conscious decision or was it something that you just kept doing? I mean, were you looking at the numbers?
Not so much. I'm not so much looking at the numbers. I don't have the amount of downloads that some people have who talk a lot of rubbish, some of these people, people like that. Mine are, but no, it's my baby. And I think it's a passion project. I'm not earning any money with it. I'm paying money. I wish I had a sponsor, but I never really bothered much. But no, I like it. And it gives me the opportunity to speak. I like people, the opportunity to speak to people, the opportunity to get in touch with people. I got invited to things because of my podcast. It's definitely not about numbers.
But has it had its challenges as well? Or was there ever a time that you thought, oh, I'm going to pack it in?
Oh, yes. And I had last year, a couple of months, I only uploaded every other week because I was fed up and I had a little down, but then it came back and people were asking me, are you still doing your podcast? I like your podcast, even if maybe they never listened, but never mind. And so I'm going to continue for now.
And we really hope that you do, because you've reached 200 and we spoke earlier at the beginning about that is a milestone because it's such a, small number of people or podcasts that get to 200 episodes. So it is very much, it's huge, Elisabeth.
I'm so
We should have a party.
Thank you.
What keeps you motivated to keep it going? I know you love speaking to people, but is it also, you must get a lot from it, listening to the stories, steering, because you are a very good interviewer. Do you enjoy is it quite, I can't really think of the question I'm trying to ask. I know what I'm trying to ask, but I don't know how to phrase it. Well, what do you get from it? Let's say you do an amazing episode, it finishes. How do you feel afterwards?
There's many things that I feel. One is I get to know somebody better than I did before. You hear things that you didn't know, even if you knew the person. You think, wow. Like maybe you now with me, there were things that you didn't know, and when I sent you this,
I definitely didn't know about that nightclub on the hill. I need, we need another episode because I'm sure some stuff went down in there.
But the other thing that I also like is, sometimes people have published a book or they have started something new, and I can give them the opportunity to talk about it. I can help them because many people have helped me in my life. And I think that is also a thing that we need. We need to, life is give and take. When you give, I believe that whatever goes out comes back. I believe in a universal account. And I believe whatever you have put in there comes back to you somehow.
100%. And I think if more people thought that way, I say this often, it costs absolutely nothing. We can even go back to a very basic a daily transaction, which is a smile. And then the thank yous, the pleases, just being kind. It costs absolutely nothing. But what it does do, it puts out so much lovely stuff out there in the universe. And it just absolutely shocks me to my core when so many people just forego these basic little things that you can do every day that might make somebody's day. And I think it all starts with that, a smile, please, thank you. And then going on to help people in any way you can, when you can. Sometimes we're not always in a position to be able to do it. But I think when you talk about women in industries, whether it's podcasting or travel or journalism, whatever it is, I've often found that the hardest barrier to overcome was other women. That was the biggest wake-up call for me in my early 20s starting out. The worst people that I came across were other women. There were a few very helpful, kind ones, and the rest were made it very difficult. And I never understood why.
No,
And
I don't understand why. And I have the same experience. I totally agree with you.
I made a point to always help when I could.
Yeah, I don't understand. I also don't understand what good it does them if they manage to sort of say something bad about you or make you feel bad, because there is this saying, blowing out somebody else's candle doesn't make yours brighter. On the contrary, two candles give out more light than just one. No, I agree with you. It's a shame, because I think maybe that's also one of the reasons why we are in the situation where we are, because women are not supporting each other enough.
And it's something needs to be done about it. I think, I hope it's getting better. But it's a big barrier, especially for young people coming up. And it's a very complicated time. But I just also, we're going to come back to the podcast, but you mentioned there, you said something that was a very helpful quote. And I wanted to know what it's like to be the daughter or son of Elisabeth, because you have learned so much about the human brain. You have learned so much about people and handling people. And I imagine that comes in very handy as a parent. What would your kids are not here, so we're not going to speak for them, but what would they say about you? Because, from toddlers to teenagers to young adults, we have many questions. Children always have questions, some big, some small. But what would your kids say about you? That they say that you're good at advice?
Well, they both think that I'm crazy. So but I have a very good time with my kids. I traveled with my kids a lot because my husband doesn't like to travel. And I wanted to make sure that I wanted to make sure that we're not going to just go to Switzerland once a year. I wanted to continue seeing the world, and I wanted them to see the world. So we've been to many, many places together. We had a great time. And the last trip we did together was last year when my son was studying in China. So, and my daughter and I went to visit him.
Amazing.
And what would my kids can be critical, like all kids. They don't always agree with everything I do. So at the beginning, when I was putting myself out there a lot, that they didn't really like that so much, but then they got used to it. Or like when we get together and I say, oh, let's take a picture, and then I will post it. So, they got over that. In the meantime, now they actually are totally okay with it. But I have a very good relationship with my kids. I'm not hovering mother. They both live in Switzerland at the moment, and we don't speak every day. We may send a message or see how are you, like how are you today or this and that. But we speak regularly, and they come to Cyprus 2-3 times a year. We go to Switzerland. We have a good thing going. Now, what do they say about me? I'm afraid you will have to ask them.
We'll have to ask them. But
Yeah.
were you good at giving advice? Because this is something I'm terrified of. My daughter is now almost 5. And sometimes, we've started with all the questions now about why is the sky blue and can I see the moon during the day and all of that stuff, most of which I don't have the answers to. But it got me thinking about, when she gets older and then the life questions come. Somebody like you, I feel, is very well equipped to handle and deal with some of those bigger questions. So did you help them, in those awkward teenage years, or at times when things that, if I don't know, from your own experiences in school or bullying or anything like that, I feel that you would just have all the answers?
Well, one thing that is very, very important to know is that it's not what you say, but it's what you do. They watch you. They see how you behave. If you are a polite person, they will be polite people. If you are kind and compassionate, they will be kind and compassionate. I think it's much more about what you do and not what you say. And it's also, sometimes kids don't want advice. They just want you to listen. And I think this is also a mistake that we sometimes make, is instead of listening to what they have to say, we already prepared a reply and how are we going to fix it? Not everything needs to be fixed. Sometimes you just need to listen and wait for it to pass, because everything passes sooner or later. I believe that also sometimes you have to see them suffer. They will break up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend. They will have pain, and all you have to be is just there and love them. Just love them whenever you can, as much as you can, all the time.
It's a tricky one to navigate, but you've got through it, and they both seem to be doing wonderfully well.
They are fine. Yes, they are. I hope they are.
But this is all about you, Elisabeth. So we're coming to the end soon, but I had a couple of more questions I wanted to ask you. We talked about guests on the podcast, but if I gave you a golden ticket and I said, you can have any guest in the world, anybody of your choosing, who would it be and why?
Roger Federer.
Oh, that's a good one. And he's a fellow Swissman.
Yeah, I'm a huge, huge fan, and I love tennis. And I used to wake up at 4 a.m. to watch the US Open or whatever. And I don't wake up so much anymore because I still watch tennis, but
because he's retired. Retired.
And he was active for a very, very, very long time. So, and Catherine and I used to drink a bottle of champagne watching Wimbledon or the French Open. And definitely him.
I've met him a few times, and he's wonderful. The first time I met him was actually in Zurich Airport, and I was about 12, must have been about 12 or 13 years old. And he was, I think, still, he was not world number one. He was still starting out. And he let us look after his bag while he went to the bathroom. So that was my first, and I have a photo.
My God. And
then when I worked at the BBC, I covered Wimbledon a couple of times, well, quite a few times actually. And I met him there, interviewed him. He is everything that you think he will be and more.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand, because I listen to interviews. He's a
real gentleman.
Yeah, he's a very, very kind, grounded person. I don't think all this success ever got to his head.
Yeah, I wonder how. He's always sort of presented as the same person he started out as.
I think he is. I believe he is. And maybe it's a Swiss thing.
Is it a Swiss thing?
Maybe. I don't know. No, it's not. Of course not. It's no. I mean, of course, yes, Swiss people are quite
They're not over the top, though. Swiss people, they're not only with their train fines, Elizabeth. That's a story for another day. But they don't seem to be over the top, and maybe that's an attribute of the Swiss. They're just very elegantly demure,
humble.
humble.
Yes. Yeah.
So Roger Federer would be the dream guest. Have you sent him Instagram messages?
No.
Well, why not?
I will start. I haven't had. I don't know. Why did I not send any?
We're putting it out in the universe.
I probably thought that it's never going to happen, but you are absolutely right. As soon as we finish this interview, I'm going to send him a message.
See, you inspired me then. Now I'm putting it out in the universe. You send him, I'll send him a message. You can send him a message. We'll get everyone in Cyprus to send you messages. Poor Roger Federer is not going to know what hit him.
We'll start the campaign.
We'll start the campaign. So today is episode 200. We're on episode 200. What is next for the podcast? Are you going to continue doing what you've been doing? Are you thinking of maybe changing the format at all, or changing how you do things? Or are you very happy with how it is?
It crossed my mind to change. And I think I've sort of already changed it a little bit, because it's not just about travel. I turned because it was at the beginning, initially, it was supposed to be just travel, most memorable journeys. But then I sort of switched it a bit and said, life is a journey. So people can talk about their life journey, and then we add a little bit of travel to it. And I think that's what I'm going to leave it at.
That's, I think it's actually a very nice formula, because travel, so many of our traveling adventures actually turn out to really shape who we are, as well as people in our lives.
Oh, yes. Yes. And I've just recently been to Kenya and Tanzania, and I recorded an episode this afternoon. 199 is about my trip to Kenya and Tanzania, which will be out before this one. And it just touched my soul. I never, ever thought that a safari in Kenya and Tanzania would get to me that much. The Serengeti is just absolutely beautiful.
What was it about the Serengeti that made you feel that way?
I don't know. It's the vastness. I went on a sunrise hot air balloon ride, and just looking down at this and understanding how little we are, that we are nothing, and what this is. And this has been like this for forever. It's not something that has been changed or touched. It's just so pure and beautiful and real. And the other thing that really touched me was the people of Kenya and Tanzania.
They're so kind.
The friendliness and the humor, the sense of humor. I think one of my important things that to get on with people is having a sense of humor. I can't stand people who can't take a joke.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that's why you and I bonded.
I'm sure.
A very inappropriate chat the first time we met, and we had a good laugh. And that is, that's what life is all about. So what are the travel plans for 2025? Kenya, Tanzania, what is next for you? Do you have any new destinations, or perhaps a favorite older destination coming up?
Well, I am hiking in Corfu in May.
Lovely.
With a group from Switzerland. I'm taking a group from Switzerland, and then I'm having another group in Andros in June. And then our yearly trip to Switzerland, either in July and August. And then I don't know. I'm looking for a sponsor.
Yeah. So I need to ask you a slightly practical question when you're booking a trip, because you have so much experience. This is what you did for so long. Are you somebody that really plans in advance, or do you love a last minute trip? Are there any tips or tricks for people? Because I think we fall into two categories. You're either the kind of person that books a holiday a year in advance, you know exactly where you're going, what day, or you're a lastminute.com person that sees an opportunity, takes it. Sometimes you have to have a little bit more financial freedom to do that option. So I do understand why so many people really do book in advance. But what is your style of choosing a destination or booking it?
It's a combination of many things. I mean, China last year was because my son was there. I went to Hong Kong a few years ago because my daughter was doing an internship in Hong Kong. It's usually connected to visiting friends. I've got friends all over the world, going somewhere like now Africa was because my friend Sora from New York wanted to go somewhere, and we decided to go to Africa. And then she booked it with an American tour operator, which was all organized from the beginning to the end. It was beautiful. you just had to do nothing. I arrived in Nairobi at 5 a.m. At 7, I was in the first jeep to go on the trip, and everything was done. That's also nice. But of course, then you have to follow the group. You have to do what they say. Everything has two sides. So I'm a bit of everything. I can, somebody could tell me, let's go tomorrow, let's go to, I don't know where, let's go to Argentina, and I'll go. But I don't plan that much in advance.
I think it's, you need a little element of surprise. And Elisabeth, for our last question, we've done a lot of reflecting on your life. We've gone from the very beginning, we've gone through the middle, the end, we've gone back to the beginning. We've kind of done the loop-de-loop of your life, because there is so much to say, and I don't think an hour can give it justice. But I know that you have learned a lot along the way that you would go back and, with hindsight, they always say hindsight is 20/20 vision, and you kind of know what you would say to your younger self. But I was wondering, if you could go back and tell yourself something, if you could go back and tell your younger self in the Swiss village something from the very beginning of your life about the journey that you've been on since then, what would you say?
Well, there's two things. I would say it's going to be okay. It's all going to work out. But the other thing is, in my 20s, when I started working and when I started earning money, because money was always a thing, we never had any money. So I started earning money. And at the time, many times, I did not do something because I was afraid of spending money, even though I had it. Because, I had this, it gave me some kind of security at the time. And I remember when I was in New York, for example, my friends would go for the weekend to Jamaica or something. And I didn't go because I didn't want to spend the money. And if I could go back, I would go. I would spend the money.
That is great advice. That is great advice. And live in the moment, spend the money, live your life, take in every experience. Elisabeth, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on your own podcast. And it's been my absolute honor to be able to talk to you, to learn from you, to learn about all of your adventures. I think that you should be incredibly proud. I'm sure all your friends and family are as well. Not just of what you've achieved in podcasting, but everything else. You have done so much, and you're a lovely person with it. You are kind, you're wonderful. And I thank you very much for your time, and I congratulate you on a huge milestone. And I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
Oh my God, I have. I actually forgot that we were doing a podcast for a while. And I also really, really want to thank you, because I know that you are a busy girl. You are a mother, and your little children are very often sick and have demands, and you work, and you're going to present the Diaspora Forum soon. And I'm sure you have a lot more important things to do than this. But
no, this is a real honor. It really is. And I could talk to you forever. And it's very difficult to talk to somebody for an hour about so much when they have so many stories. We do need to revisit the nightclub on the hill. I would need some stories from there, but maybe those are also classified for
they're not.
While.
Those are, there's a certain time limit. It's like the Kennedy murder. After a certain time, papers get released. So that the nightclub on the hill is open.
Is it still there?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Okay, I'm going to do some research. Thank you so much again. Congratulations. And I hope everyone listening enjoyed the conversation. And I hope you keep listening, keep downloading, and following Most Memorable Journeys. And thank you for listening to episode 200. We hope to see you back for episode 201.
If you enjoy my podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. You will find all the information in the show notes.